You're listening to Stories Behind the Songs with Chris Blair. For more information, you can find us on Instagram and TikTok at SBT Songs, or check us out at chrisblair.com. What's up, everybody? This week, we've got Emily Falvey on the podcast, and thanks again to Smack Publishing. This is another episode with Smack. They're amazing publishers here in town on Music Row, and we're so thankful to be partnering with them on this. We're going to talk about why Emily is with Smack and the family atmosphere that this place has. We're also going to dive into everything that she has done in such a short time in her career. She also has done some stuff in the EDM pop world, which is a little different. She's also had a lot of success in the country world already. We're going to talk about some songs that she's written for Cody Johnson, Walker Hayes, and more. Also, one of her favorite songs that's not even been released yet. We also talk about her own podcast that she has started just recently, so we'll make sure you check that out. And how she just started teaching songwriting at Belmont University. Such a great episode. I loved sitting down and hearing more of her story. Let's get to it. Here is Emily Falvey. Welcome back, everybody. We've got Professor Emily Falvey, songwriter, podcast host yourself.
Yes.
And this is your first year teaching at Belmont. So we're going to dive into all that.
Yes.
But thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
This is going to be fun. Yeah. Well, we're back here at Smack.
Yes.
This has been really fun to do this series with them. And I want to dive into what it was like for you to get your first deal here and talk about all that. But let's just start from the beginning. That's where I always start. So tell me about like how you grew up, how you got into music, and what got you to Belmont.
Yes. Well, I always like to say I don't have a hometown because I moved a lot. So I was born in Tampa, Florida. And then when I was 8, we moved to Denver, Colorado. And I was put in piano lessons when I was 5 because I was really terrible at sports. I was like the pick flowers on the soccer field kind of lady.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And my parents wanted me to stick to something throughout my childhood, so they decided music was probably a better option.
Yep.
And so I started playing piano, really loved it, and then moved to Colorado. My dad's a drummer, and so he was playing at church every Sunday, and I got connected kind of in the worship space, started leading worship when I was a kid. And it just so happened that my dad was in a country cover band, and I learned about country music from a young age. And the 2 kids in the family band that my dad was in were dying to move to Nashville and go to a school called Belmont. So when I was in 6th grade, I found out about Belmont. I had been writing songs. I saw Taylor Swift on TV when I was 8 or 9, and it kind of just inspired me. There was also this show on Nickelodeon called The Naked Brothers Band where it was 2 brothers that wrote songs. And so I just kept seeing these people writing songs on TV, and I was like, if they can do that, I can do that. For whatever reason, songs just kind of started to flow out of me from a pretty young age. And so then I heard about the Belmont songwriting program when I was in middle school, and it kind of changed the trajectory of my life because it kind of became my lifelong goal to get in. And by the grace of God, I did. And so I ended up moving to Texas for high school, did a ton of choir and vocal lessons and all kinds of things, and then ended up moving here when I was 18. And the rest is kind of history.
Yeah. So, did you go into it knowing that you wanted to be in songwriting, or was it more just like, hey, music industry, something in that?
Songwriting was always my dream.
Okay.
And then I got to Belmont and saw how extraordinary everyone was and got really intimidated. And I also am such a nerd. I had a ton of AP credit. And so it was looking like Belmont was going to be about 2.5 or 3 years for me by the time I got there. And so I ended up declaring a double major in music business. I'm super type A and business minded.
Yeah.
And so I thought it'd be helpful to have, accounting and marketing and all that kind of stuff. So I did 2 degrees at Belmont.
Love it. Yeah. All right. So then walk me through, how did you get connected with Smack? And, I think if I remember, like you were here as an intern.
Yes.
And then that's how you got your deal, which is number one, a great way to do it. That's that business mind of you like, hey, let's figure out how to get in this door. But what was that like for you?
Yeah. Well, there was a lot of tension in my college journey of I was singing background vocals for people at the showcases. I was always kind of being the side guy. And so I had these creative ambitions that I kind of kept to myself, and kind of with my personality told myself that I'd be better off as a music publisher, because there's a lot more stability in that path. And so I started to do a ton of internships in publishing. And it just so happened that I interned at SMAC the fall semester of my senior year. I had just gotten my heart broken the summer before and was writing a lot of angsty demos in my dorm room. And for whatever reason, somebody sat me down here and took a lot of interest in me. I think I was doing a good job getting the LaCroix and the coffee for everybody.
Yeah.
And they said, how can we help you get to where you want to go after graduation? And I think that's something that I love about SMAC is they've always really cared about individuals, no matter if you're the intern or the CEO here. There's just this deep level of care. And so they empowered me, and I said, I want to be a songwriter. And I guess I must have just been having a bold day that day, but that day changed my life because I ended up sending along some demos, and Robin Palmer heard them and Lee heard them. And it just so happened that we sat down and had a meeting, and they said, you need to be a songwriter, not a publisher. And that kind of changed my whole, paradigm. And I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah. So. I want to dive in a little bit, into the EDM world. Yeah. Because it's like,
I love that you know that.
Yeah. It's, being here in Nashville, people think of Nashville, maybe not as much today, but even going back just a few years, they think of this as like country music city.
For sure.
And it's not. It's like we are the hub for every genre of music out there.
Yeah.
But most of the people that we've had on this podcast are writers for country music or artists in the country music world or whatever. So I think it's really cool. And I know that, a lot of what you do is in the country area, but you've dabbled in that EDM world.
Yeah.
So walk me through, like, how did that even come about, and what's the difference for you in those two worlds?
Absolutely. It's so funny. When I had that first conversation with SMAC when I was in college, I said, I'm a pop songwriter and I want to go sign at another pop publisher in town. And the whole premise was for them to sign me, or to send me to another publisher for them to sign me. And then they ended up hearing the demos and they were like, oh, we want you, which was so mind boggling because in my mind, I didn't think of myself as a country songwriter, but I've been grateful to learn that language. And I feel really fortunate to be in the country ecosystem as well. But so I always kind of have loved pop music. My dad's from California, so I grew up on the Beach Boys and Carole King and all kinds of different music, also a lot of Christian music. And I had one of my very first writing trips in LA. I went, and the producer in our session that day ended up being in a EDM group. And so that was the first cut I ever got was a song called Fire Hazard, which now I listen to and I'm like, haha. But it ended up kind of opening this whole door in EDM. Once you've collaborated with one group, there's kind of this door that opens if people hear your vocal and want to, have you come into the world. And so I'm really grateful because I have worked with people from all over the world. I've been on writing trips to Europe now. I have just met so many extraordinary people. I have friends in Australia. I just get hit up by people constantly from all over the globe. And so it's fun to bring that Nashville style of writing to that world of dance. And I always say I'm creating some passive income for myself because I'm kind of a grandma. And I go to bed really early, but I know that on the other side of the world, somebody's jamming to my music in the club while I'm asleep.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. What kind of struggles did you see, getting in? You got your first publishing deal at a very young age, and people call this a 10-year town, and all of that. So what were some of the struggles, and how did you overcome those? Yeah, getting into this so early.
Yeah, I think we all pay our dues somehow. Yeah. And I was very fortunate to come out ahead on the timeline piece of it. I didn't have to, I got to have a publishing deal when I graduated. So I went straight from being in school to writing full time, which was really such a privilege and a blessing that I don't take lightly.
Yeah.
But I think this town, one of my publishers always says, this town will humble you somehow. And I think that whether you have success at an early moment and then it takes a while for that next success to come, or whether it takes 10 years just for you to get that first opportunity, I think that this town always has an extraordinary level of grit that's required. And so for me, I think being somebody that works in multiple genres, that's something that sometimes feels different and feels like sometimes I'm too pop for country or too country for pop. I feel like I don't belong. I feel like, there's so many wild things. I'd say I write from a female perspective, and we're in a male-dominated genre here in Nashville, and sometimes that can be, I've learned how to write better from the male perspective, but that's taken some learning for me.
Sure.
You know, there's all kinds of different things about my journey that, you know, I thought it'd go quicker than it has or look different than it has. But there's also so much gratitude for getting to do what I've always dreamed of doing.
Yeah.
And so I try to keep gratitude at the root of it, because there are many days that I can get frustrated or compare or any of that. But I feel like God has me in this specific place for this specific reason. So
yeah, I love that. Do you feel like you need to be in Nashville? Not you, but like, you know, like with what we have in the world today with socials and all of that, like, what's your take on that? Do you like, if people that are listening, like, want to be a songwriter, obviously if you're going to be an artist, you got to be here with the labels and all that. Is there a world where you can do this outside of living in town?
It's a good question. I think there's always the examples of the Ben Wests and the Lori McKennas who have their primary residence somewhere else and are willing to travel in. When I talk to people, I always say it's helpful to be in a major music market just because that's where the industry is located. I do think the internet has made it more possible than it ever has been to not be here. But I just think about if I'd been anywhere else but Nashville and learned how to write a song, it would be completely different. And so I can't think I've been to all the major music markets at this point in my career. And I would say there's just something really extraordinary about this town and how it operates. It's changing because now country's having this global moment. And I think so many people see what we have and they're attracted to it. And that, I think, by nature changes the fabric of our town a little bit. But there's nowhere I would rather be. I don't want to tell anybody else how to live their life, but I think that Nashville's worth taking a chance on. From my vantage point. Yeah. I
was smiling because I thought I was a pretty good songwriter when I lived in St. Louis before I moved here.
I hear you are a good songwriter. That's the folklore in town.
I go back and I listen to those songs that I wrote back in St. Louis before I was in a room with people that were way better than me. And I was like, oh, this is how you do it. Yeah. So that's the thing that I have taken away of, like, you know, being in town versus going back to like those songs that you wrote when you just were being poetic. And
the bar is high here.
It is so high.
And I think I've been to other places, and not to say that there's not extraordinary things about LA or London or Sweden or the places that I've been fortunate enough to write, but I just hear the caliber of the songs that come out of here, and I never am not inspired to be better. Yeah. And so, you know, I even listened to songs from 2 years ago and I'm like, oh God, you know, I just think that that's the great news, is that we're always growing and changing and evolving as creative people. And I just want to leave space for that growth. Yeah. So love it. Let's dive in a little bit with Smack. Yeah. You kind of talked about the family vibe here. Yeah. And I've known Shane and Josh for years. Those guys were playing before Smack was probably ever even thought about. Yeah. And then I want to dive into some stories behind the songs, what this podcast is all about. Absolutely. You know, because we're doing this series with Smack, which is so cool. This is the first time that we've done this 4 weeks in a row with the publisher. Yeah. What was it for you? Obviously the internship, but, you know, especially the fact that you said you were like, your goal was like, hey, I want to go to a pop label. Yeah. What was it about Smack that makes it so special, and where you were just like, okay, this is home? Yeah. And you just signed your second round. Yeah. And I decided to stay, which I think is a testament to who these people are and this place is. I added a joint venture with Warner Chappell for that extra pop help, and I have an extraordinary champion in Christina Wiltshire over there. Yeah. But I feel like Smack has believed in me from the time that I was 21 and had 0 artist relationships, 0 activity, 0 cuts. And Robin walked up to me while I was, it was Shane's birthday. I'll never forget the day. It was a day in October in the fall of my senior year at Belmont. And she walked up to me and she said, "You have an extraordinary talent." And I had no reason for her to see anything in what I was doing. I listened back to those songs like you probably listened to those songs from Missouri. And I'm like, how did she hear anything in that? But I just feel really grateful for the early belief when there was nothing in it for them other than just, to help a young person who was dreaming of this. And just who these people are. I think that they genuinely love music. They genuinely love people. This culture is unlike anywhere else in town to me. I really do love a lot of these people like family. Now, we've done life together for so many years that, we've walked through marriage and babies and all kinds of things together. And so it's just, this community is so dear to me, and I'm really grateful for my Smack family. So
love that.
Yeah.
All right, let's dive into some songs. I want to touch a little bit on how your creative process is.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, I love hearing different takes of what people bring to the room, whether it's a lyric or the melody, hooks, rhymes, whatever. I've heard you have quoted Nicole Gallion.
Yes.
And we're looking for the 100% in the room kind of thing.
Absolutely.
So walk through how, from what I know of you, I think that you have a really unique gift of just kind of shifting to find yourself in the room wherever it is. Do you need to play the keys and add that piece? Do you come with the idea? A lot of people, they have that thing that they're really good at, and that's what they're brought into the room to do.
Yeah.
And I feel like with you, it's like, well, where do you need me? And you can jump in.
That's kind. Well, because I moved a lot, I think I had to figure out how to make friends quickly and figure out where I fit in.
Yeah.
And so I think I walk into a co-write, and there are days when an artist knows exactly who they are and what they want to say. And I'm just kind of being their cheerleader and helping them, articulate their story. And there are days that you're working with somebody who's brand new to town and they're still trying to find their identity. And those are fun days because you get to help shape what somebody's doing. So for me, it is. That Nicole quote is very brilliant of, I'm just trying to make the room add up to 100%. And so some days that's 85% of the work, and some days that's 5% of the work. I am very passionate about melodies and passionate about lyric. I think that just, I'm not the best player or, sonic mastermind, but I love working with people who are excellent at what they do. And hopefully I can bring something that adds value to the sessions that I'm in. So I'm grateful.
Well, I feel like you have.
Some days.
You've written some really great songs.
Thank you.
So let's dive into some.
Yeah.
Talk to me about Kojo.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
It's kind of been, again, I write pop songs in my heart.
Yeah.
So it's been kind of a hilarious journey.
And you went to the most country artist that you could find
by far,
in Cody Johnson.
The cowboyest of the cowboys.
Yes.
Well, I was very fortunate to meet Adam James early on in my writing career in Nashville.
Brilliant guy.
And he is just, I wrote with him yesterday and I spend the whole day laughing. He is just the most clever, brilliant person.
Yep.
And so he and I went a ways back, and then I think this was our very first write with Stennis. But the three of us got together and they have such a vibe, the two of them. They go back, they were signed to a publishing company together 10 years ago. So they just have this existing dynamic. And those are also some of my favorite days when two writers have such a vibe and you get to step in and be like, okay, so where do I fit in this really wonderful creative partnership that already exists?
Yeah.
And it was the end of the year. It was December, and every songwriter knows that in December, nobody has any ideas anymore. We're just kind of ready for the Christmas break and it's time to be done for the year. And I had this crazy idea called Me and Springsteen. And it was me and Springsteen got it made being born in the USA. And we had this whole hour-long talk because Born in the USA is such a social commentary about how America's not always the best place to be. And so we kind of poked holes and they were like, I think we just need to be better off talking about the positivity, which is what I wanted. I think in the, we're just kind of in such a divided place as a country, and that's been really hard. And so I, as someone who tries to press into gratitude, wanted to write a song that day that united us instead of divided us.
Yeah.
And so they indulged my crazy patriotic idea, which is not really normally my default setting as a songwriter. And we wrote a song that I'm really proud of. And it's called Made in the USA. And it ended up, I think within a week, we turned it in. Laura Alexander at Young Guns sent it to Trent Willman, Cody's producer, and it immediately went on hold. The chatter in town at that time was Cody's done. We'd all like been shooting for that record, and I had not had any luck. And I felt like I thought the ship had sailed. And it's so funny because sometimes in this town, you write a song that, you know, kind of changes everybody's timeline.
Yeah.
And I'm really grateful. Then it took 2 years for the song to come out. But at that time, it kind of changed the whole, you know, trajectory of what I thought his album cycle looked like. And, and so I'm really grateful for it. It's definitely been a game changer. And to feel how people react when I play it at the listening room, I just feel like it's something that we've all kind of been hungry for as a country. So I'm grateful.
Yeah. It's such a great song. Let's
Thank you.
hear a little bit of it.
All right. Let's do it.
We're a Springsteen song in a second-hand Chevy. We're Red Wing boots and blue Levi's. We're a fourth and a long, long shot Hail Mary on a home team Friday night. We're at a bar in Boston singing Sweet Home Alabama, mixing up Kentucky bourbon with Coca-Cola from Atlanta. We're a little bit of everywhere rolled into one. At the end of the day, when it's said and done, we still run to the fire when push comes to shove. We never back down, no, we never give up. Still home of the brave, land of the free. Out of everywhere I've been, it's still where I wanna be. From them skyscraper skies to them water tower towns, ain't running out of dreams, got enough to go around. We can pray what we wanna pray, love who we wanna love, say what you wanna say about us, but we got it made in the USA. Got it made in the USA.
So good.
Thank you.
I wanna talk a little bit about I don't know the story behind this, but you went to Ecuador.
I did.
While like in the middle of
in the middle
this
of
song?
it. Thank you for knowing.
Yeah.
So I've been very fortunate to be connected with Carter Hamrick, who he used to be a business manager here in town. And he and his wife, Lindsay, have become dear friends of mine, but they have a songwriter festival down in Naples, Florida called Nash to Naples. And, it's a benefit for an orphanage in Ecuador called Hacienda of Hope. And for whatever reason, I'd gotten a DM and they were like, free trip to Naples. I was like, say less. I'm going to go on this songwriting festival. And Carter called me up one day. It was right around the same time that Made in the USA was written. And he said, hey, a songwriter was supposed to come join us in Ecuador and they can't anymore. Would you like to come? And it was just this random, did not know Carter from Adam. I met him at the gate in our flight to Miami to Quito.
Yeah.
And, for whatever reason, I'm also fluent in Spanish, which was just kind of like serendipitous and random.
Yeah.
And I said, I'd love to go to Ecuador. You know, what other reason would I ever go there?
Yeah.
And my life was just changed by, the kids that are there and the executive directors of that place. And so, yes, I wrote Made in the USA, I think on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, and then went to Ecuador on a Friday. And then we came back, we wrote the bridge and the second verse of Made in the USA when I got back. But in the middle of like our session writing it and then finishing it, I went to Ecuador and then was doubly reminded how much we've got it made in the USA.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to hear that because I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of times the songs are finished that day and maybe tweaked a little bit, but you know, to kind of leave the country, experience that and do good work and then come back and it
was really kind of a very quick turnaround too. It's not normally like that.
Yeah.
With AJ and Stennis, we now have a regular write, and typically it takes 2 for when we write a song. There's another song that we wrote called Ford Tough, and it was a similar 2 days of work. And I think I think some people will call me fast and Falvey. I have a friend named Nate Miles he nicknamed me that. I take pride in being pretty quick most days. And then for whatever reason, that room specifically encourages us all to slow down. And I think that's kind of a lost art in our town to just like, it doesn't have to be finished in 3.5 hours.
Yeah.
You don't have to be done by the time you go pick your kids up from school at 2:45.
Yeah.
And that's freed me a lot. So,
yeah, I think that's so good. We did an episode with who said this? Victoria Shaw.
Yeah.
Probably over a year ago, where we talked about that a little bit, and that's one of the things that she mentioned, where it's like, you're right. Like a lot of times, and I'm guilty of it too, where I'm like, okay, we're almost there. We gotta push through, and then sometimes you have to come back and tweak because you're like, we should have just spent a little bit more time with this.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things that Vic was talking about, is that, sometimes she'll spend 3, 4, 5 days writing a song until it's absolutely like, okay, this is it.
Which I respect that a lot. To be willing to sit with one song for that much time is really a lost art, I think.
Yeah.
This episode is brought to you by Brit Skin Beauty. Located in the beautiful Indulgence Medi Spa in Mount Juliet, Tennessee, Brittany is the go-to esthetician for facials, dermaplaning, microdermabrasion, waxing, lashes, and any skincare products and consultations. So many people in the music industry use her frequently, and her work speaks for itself. To schedule your next consultation or make an appointment, visit britskinbeauty.com or send an email to britskinbeauty@gmail.com.
Okay, let's, Walker Hayes is, part of the Smack family.
Yes.
And, he's been around town for a long time, and, like many of us that have been in town for a while and known all of these people, before they were known everywhere.
Isn't it wild?
You knew Walker while he was still working at Costco.
Yeah.
And you kind of got to ride that train up to Fancy Like and everything else, and also have a song with him. So let's talk about how that journey has been.
Yeah, I just played a benefit show with Walker last night.
Oh, that's amazing.
He's extraordinary. Just such a wonderful man with his priorities really in the right place, and that's been so cool to see. Fame hasn't changed who he is.
Yeah.
And so
he has a really cool barndominium that they're about to finish. That's going to be sick.
Yeah, he told me the gym floors are done, so they've been in there playing basketball every night. But I feel so fortunate for him. My first day of interning, I typed the lyrics to his song Craig. And so I've just the bar has always been set because I think he's probably one of the most brilliant lyricists in our town. He's just thinks of rhymes nobody else would ever think of. He has such uniquely human ideas. I know sometimes they're out there, but to me, he just has such an innovative and beautiful way of saying things. And so I've been fortunate to have a few songs with him. On his debut record, I had a duet with him and Carly Pierce called What If We Did? We wrote a song, I think last year or the year before, called Six String American Dream. But my favorite that we wrote is called Face in the Crowd, which is a song that Topher Brown, Walker, and I wrote. And so that was just a gift of a day because I love those guys. And it was right in the middle of Fancy Like had just had its very massive moment. And so we watched Walker's life change so dramatically. We're in Topher's studio, Concord on 8th Ave. And we're leaving the studio the day that we wrote this song. And Walker's walking to his car, which is like literally a 10-foot walk from the door to his car. And some people in the Gulch come running from across the street to come take a selfie with him. It's like just at the height of the pandemonium.
Yeah.
And how crazy it is because I've known his, just the journey of like, you broke up with me a couple of years prior, and then there were a couple of quieter years, and then all of a sudden, bam, you have this massive song, right? I find that sometimes the industry will push people right to the edge of like, is this going to happen? And then all of a sudden it just kind of broke wide open for him. And so Face in the Crowd was just about how his priorities have always been his family. And all I ever cared about was Your Face in the Crowd. The song's kind of dedicated to his wife, Lainey, who's stuck by him through the Costco years all the way to, where they are now with the cool barn dominium. And I just really respect that prioritization of family. And he's just a gift. So
take me into the room on one of those songs.
Yeah.
And walk me through what the creative process was like and how the song came to life and all of that.
Every day with Walker's different because there are a lot of times that he comes in extraordinarily inspired and it's like a freight train and you get on it because he's such a brilliant mind. Yeah. That he's one of those artists that a lot of days I get to just be his cheerleader because he's already he knows himself the best. And that's what I love about him is there's already such identity there.
Yeah.
In the case of Face in the Crowd, it was kind of, I knew I needed to add value to the extraordinary moment that he was having. And so I brought in that chorus to say, here's what from my vantage point, knowing you for a long time, here's how I see the situation and from your perspective. And it was such an honor for him to believe in that idea, because he's so one that like has such extraordinary ideas all the time. But Topher's an extraordinary musician. Walker's just this brilliant lyricist. And so, I always try to bring ideas, because I feel like I had a songwriting professor at Belmont say, always bring a gift to the party. So I try to never show up empty-handed to a writing session, because I think that, Walker could write a Walker song easily. He doesn't need me. But I always want to bring something that adds value to the Walker Hayes brand of things, or whatever artist I'm in the room with. And so that was kind of the process for a lot of that.
I think you're very humble.
Oh,
I think if Walker was sitting in here, he would challenge that and say that you bring a ton to the room. So.
Well, I think sometimes it's just, maximizing what people already have. And I think that's a lot of times we as songwriters can get in our ego of, well, I need to make sure that I'm the star of this session. And there are days I'm the star of the session, I would say, but there are a lot more days that I would rather Walker tell his truth and it feel personal to him, and just be able to aid in that and support that. I also had a mentor in college named Emily Falvey who said songwriting is a service industry. And I think that's so true. Of my goal, especially in 2025, a new goal for me is like, how much can I just go in and bless these people that I'm in the room with, and not be so attached to the outcome of the session as much as how can I serve the people that I'm getting to interact with on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So
love that.
Yeah.
I want to talk about some songs that aren't out yet.
Yeah.
I think, it's easy to talk about those songs that people have heard and they can go find them on DSPs and whatever. But, sometimes, even for me, the some of my favorite songs never get heard.
Yeah.
Unless I'm at a writer's round or something like that, because they're just, there's magic that happens in the room that day.
Yep.
And then it goes into the guitar case.
Yep.
And they just sit there.
Yeah.
And we've got a lot of songs that get written in this town every single day.
Yeah.
By brilliant songwriters. One of your favorites that you've written is not yet released.
Yeah. Yeah.
Talk about that.
Yeah. So I have two extraordinary co-writers named Dylan Guthrow and Gordy Sampson. Yeah. And Dylan Guthrow just came to Smack, which I'm super pumped about. And Gordy is just an icon. And every time I get to watch him play the songs that he's written, it's truly a privilege. So getting to step into the room with those two Nova Scotians I love are really great days for me. And so maybe 2 Februaries ago, I'd had this idea that nobody would write with me. And I knew it was a good idea. And I was like, y'all, I need you to tell me if this sucks, because I have thrown this in a bunch of writes and nobody will write it with me. And it just so happened that they believed in it and we wrote it, and it's called Do Over. And it's a personal story. I think it's rare as a songwriter to get to step into a room and tell your own story. Yeah. Because a lot of days I'm helping tell an artist's story. So this was a healing day for me of just being able to tell my own truth. And Gordy and Dylan indulged me in that moment. And so this one's personal to me. Every word of it's true. And I'm really proud of it. So
what's it like when you're in a room with songwriters like that? And how do you shift?
Yeah. I think for me, leaning on Dylan and Gordy have known each other for years and years, because Gordy and Dylan's dad were really connected in the music scene in Nova Scotia. So that's another one of those, like Adam and Stennis, where they have deep, rich history and some implicit trust that already exists with each other. And so to get to step into that is so special. And now we've gone on retreats together, and they're just really dear people to me. But to step in the room with them, building that trust was just getting to marvel at their talent, because they're so amazing and so musical. And B, just, again, figuring out how to put my own stamp and fingerprint on something to make it so that they'll want to keep writing with me. Yeah. So, yeah.
I love it. Do you want to play a little bit of that one?
Yeah, let's do it.
We've all got a dive bar it hurts to walk into. We've all got a home team that wasn't supposed to lose. We've all got a reason to wanna rewind, and baby, it'd still be mine. We've all got that memory we wish we could live again. Keep the same story and just rewrite the end. Sometimes I wonder if you think of me, and I get to thinking about all of the things we could do over drinks, do overnight. I'd put in the work, yeah, I'd do overtime. I'd love you harder and I'd kiss you slower. You're at the top of my list of the things I do over.
That song needs to be out.
It's been on hold a few times.
Yeah.
and sometimes there can be just like things, not the right time, not the right whatever. And, I believe it'll find its way into the world. And I always joke that if it doesn't, then I will break my I'm never going to be an artist rule and put it out, because I just believe in it that much. So.
Okay. Well, we heard it here first.
Yeah.
So yes.
It may be in 2035, but we'll see.
Okay. We have to touch on the EDM world a little bit.
Yeah.
I want to talk about Wasted because,
I'm dead.
Let's do it.
You must have been at the listening room whenever I play it or something, but I don't know. I feel like that song was, my mother will be dismayed to know that this is a part of this interview, because I had now a dear friend, but a random stranger from Australia slide into my DMs on Instagram, and he said, "Emily, I'm obsessed with your singing videos. I love your voice, and I have this track that I think you'd be awesome on." And it was right coming off the heels of Fire Hazard, my first EDM song. And I thought to myself, well, maybe that would be just a fun exercise.
Yeah.
So myself and my friend from Belmont, Austin Bianco, got together one night, and we just are very creative and have fun together and experiment with a lot of crazy stuff. And I just said, I have this track from this guy in Australia. Let's spend 30 minutes top lining this, and it'll not take any time at all, and it'll just be fun. So literally, we probably spent 30 minutes writing, to me, what I thought people in the club would want to hear, which is getting drunk and hooking up, which is not stuff that I do very often.
Yep.
Maybe more in the music industry than I used to in my Sister Christian Belmont days, but I just don't have a ton of experience with that, but I wrote what I thought those people would want to hear. And thought nobody would ever hear that song. And I come from a very conservative Christian family. So that song about getting drunk and hooking up did not go over super well. And it just so happened, by the law of nature, we always joke that like the songs you don't want to be heard end up being the ones that go
hits.
crazy.
Yeah.
So like I have gotten videos from friends shopping in Zara, Wasted's blaring in the mall. It was on the radio all over Australia. I played a show once, and some people from New Zealand came up to me and they were like, "That song's huge where we are." And it's just so funny. But I always joke I'm famous in Australia. Maybe not here, but that song had its moment and has millions of streams on the internet. And it was absolutely an accident, and kind of, again, opened up this ecosystem of a ton of DJs being like, "Hey, will you sing on something?" And it's honestly, between the listening room and my EDM vocal feeds, it's kept my lights on as a songwriter.
Wow.
And so that's been a really fun way to quote unquote side hustle.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Do you still do a lot of that?
I am at a point where I am excited for the right things. And I think it's, being strategic.
Yeah.
And, as you have more success, your price goes up. And, I'm trying to figure out, knowing my own value is something that I'm always working on.
Yeah.
And so aligning with opportunities that make sense in that space, I'm always open to.
Yeah. I love it. What else could you add to like what the industry is like today?
Yeah.
Like what kind of advice would you give somebody?
Yeah. I think we're in an extraordinarily cool time and also an extraordinarily scary time, just with the advent of new technologies. Spotify, I came to college in 2014 and Spotify had just kind of come on the scene and changed the entire structure of how we do business. And then in the same way, I feel like we're kind of on the precipice of that with AI. And so I feel like there's all kinds of crazy technology that stands to help us and also can be a threat at times.
Yeah.
But I think that the streaming services have made music so much more possible to be heard. And now people are hearing things that they maybe never would have, and genres are blurring, and there's just an extraordinary amount of music coming out every day, which I think is so awesome. And I think that creates more opportunity for songwriters, because the more people that have a platform, the more songwriters that can exist. At the same time, I think our pay structure is still kind of in an unprecedented place. And so unless you're having hits on the radio, it can be hard to sustain a life as a songwriter. And so I think, I'm just trying to show up and create the best music and be as creative as I can to keep my lights on. And that's why I'm really grateful for the listening room, is y'all, I think, keep the middle class of songwriters alive. And y'all have just created such an extraordinary place where I feel so safe and have so much fun. I'm also looking at the guys back here who make it all possible, and they're just some of my favorite people. And I don't know. I feel like if you're considering a career in music, I'd say go at it with your most fearless and delusional perspective, because I think that's what you need to chase a crazy dream like this. And just be prepared for it to look way different than you ever thought it would. I never thought I'd be singing in clubs in Europe or writing songs about trucks, but here we are. Yeah. And so I'm really grateful to be here, even in the moments of hardship and difficulty and wondering what the hell I'm doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a really meaningful way to spend time to be in the music industry. So
let's dive into that a little bit more. The middle class songwriter.
Yeah.
I love how you put that. And, I think there's this cool factor of being a songwriter that, we almost have our built-in counselor every day.
Yeah.
We can go through these emotions, and we can go in and we can pour this stuff out into a song.
Yeah.
And that's very, it really builds that thick skin and helps, I think.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of struggle.
Yeah.
In the industry. And especially with the way that pay is right now, and think
more than people are honest about, I think.
Yeah. 100%.
And as someone who I pour a lot back into that next generation of Belmont kids or whoever, it's like, I want to be more transparent about that struggle, because I think it's easy to glaze over the 3 record deals that failed before you get to the 4th one where you have all your hits, or the Josh Osborne 3 or 4 publishing deals that didn't work before he's Josh Osborne. Right. It's like, I just think there's such power in that struggle. And I would say there's been a lot of struggle in my story. And there are many days that I think everybody has this delusional belief that they're special and they're the exception. And in a lot of years of my life, I was a straight A student and excelled at a lot of things in my life. And so I assumed, in a lot of ego, that I would exceed expectations and accelerate that 10-year timeline, and it hasn't been what I thought it would on that front. However, I think that there's purpose in that. And some people's stories take longer. Some people's stories rocket to success quickly. And I just want to run my own race well. But yeah, I think where we are economically, there's all kinds of things that I just think it is what makes me grateful for people like y'all, and being able to play songs for, fans that really care about songwriters, because they are what keep us in business while we are figuring out the, pay discrepancies and all the craziness that is above my pay grade.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I went through leadership music in 2016-17.
It's a goal of mine one day.
Is it? Well, we can talk about me nominating you.
Oh, that's kind.
But even, almost 10 years ago, like we were talking about how broken the pay structure is.
Yeah.
And, thank God for people like Bart at NSAI who, go to DC all the time.
Yeah. Lee Miller,
advocating.
Here at
Lee
Smack.
Miller.
Yeah, I'm grateful for him.
It's just, it's the majority of people that they live their life every day with this soundtrack of their lives, don't even know that where that was created are the people that are eating ramen noodles and struggling to get somewhere. And, I don't want to go down a long path with that. Like, it is what it is, and hopefully it will get fixed.
Yep.
But the thing that I did want to talk about is just what you are doing, which I think is super special. And I want to dive into Mind Over Melody.
Yeah, you're sweet.
And you've dropped kind of your first episode.
Yeah, there's more on their way.
Little 10-minute teaser of why people should even tune in to it, and the stories of you and your co-host. And I just think it's really special of bringing that to light of the mental issues that people can get in this industry and beyond. But dive into that a little bit. I just want to promo your own podcast and
that's kind of you. Thank you.
What you're doing. So how did that idea come about? You guys didn't even really know each other at Belmont. You don't remember where you crossed paths.
But I've known her a long time, probably 7 or 8 years at this point. But so Samantha Jervey, my business partner, and I, we sit on a council for an organization called Porter's Call, which exists here in Nashville, and they do extraordinary work of providing free counseling services for recording artists. And so as a songwriter, I come at it from an interesting point of saying, well, songwriters really need help too. And there have been wonderful champions in our town like Rusty Gaston who provide counseling for their songwriters. And I just see such a wonderful thing. SMAC has supported me. I was able to go to onsite this past year, and SMAC helped cover that for me, which was really an extraordinary experience. But I think I'm somebody, and a lot of high achiever, straight A student type people operate with a certain level of anxiety in life. But I think for me, just the desire to succeed can sometimes come to a level where it becomes physical, and I start to be like, okay, I need to be drinking less coffee and spinning out a little less about all of this. And so I started to notice that in myself probably 5 years ago, and just wanted to be vocal about, because most every creative person that I know has when we feel as deeply as we do, I think it takes a certain level of just emotion to be able to articulate the human experience, and to be able to write songs about losing a parent, or, just any sort of anything that we go through in life. And so those deep feelings can sometimes metastasize in depression or anxiety or any sort of addiction issue. I think that's really prevalent in our town, but I just see this gaping need for mental health support in our town. And I'd be foolish to think that I'm single-handedly going to solve that problem. But we hear in our board meetings, I sit on another board for a nonprofit called Mental Health Initiative, which was started by Ben Johnson, and his wife, Lauren Conklin's kind of the main driver, and her sister, Jessie Lovature. And they do extraordinary work of helping people get long-term mental health care. But that's just something that I really feel passionate about. Anywho, so Mind Over Melody is just an opportunity for songwriters and anybody in the music industry to get what they need, to hear about the honest and transparent struggle of being a creative person. And I hope that people feel really seen and heard in the stories that we share. And I hope it can just be something to take the edge off and lighten the load of this crazy creative profession that we've signed up for. So
I'm excited to tune in. I've already saved it in my podcast list.
You're so kind. Thank you.
When are more episodes coming out?
Yeah, so they'll be coming out on a bi-weekly basis this spring. So we have some coming down the pike. Yeah. And my business partner, Sam, is on maternity leave. She just had her first baby. So we have our first 8 queued up while she's on maternity leave. And then we'll get back to recording after that. And so it's all really fun.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. What else do you have coming up this year?
I feel like this year is a year where I have already been pleasantly surprised in a lot of ways. I feel like it's been a year of good omens. And so I'm just trying to be present in the moments that I'm in, and write songs that we're passionate about when we're sitting in the room. And teaching a class is a new experience for me.
Yeah, I started this podcast by saying Professor Emily Falvey.
Yeah, which is a weird thought.
You are like, I know you, like, I've heard you a couple of times talk about like just where you are in your career. I have to tell you, I've been in this town for over 20 years. Moved here in 2003.
Yeah.
I have seen so many dear friends struggle and then become award-winning songwriters, or, you know, watch the ACMs, and every artist that walks across that stage pretty much started playing at the listening room. It's really cool to sit back and go, wow, they're all friends, and I've seen that, but it's that struggle that I saw.
Yeah.
You are in your 20s.
Yeah.
You are a professor at Belmont. You've got a great publishing deal. You've got these songs that have been recorded by Kojo, Walker, like all this great stuff that's happened.
Yeah.
You're a podcast host. Like it's just like, it's amazing. Like what you've accomplished, in such a short time. Like the world has not yet even seen what Emily is about to do.
Well, thank you. I feel really fortunate. And I will just say the listening room has been such a wonderful place to get to come. And so what you've built has helped. I feel like it's touched the whole town. And so thank you for that. And it's been a joy to get to partake in the community you've built. And I'm really just, it's a crazy journey. Or as, you know, Jason Aldean would say, it's a crazy town full of neon dreams.
Yeah.
And I am just trying to hold on for dear life in the midst of all of it. But yeah. So.
Well, going back to the professor thing, like how'd that even start?
Yeah. Well, I am a nerd, as I have probably stated. And so I was very involved at school in a lot of different ways when I went to college at Belmont. And in a very funny way, ended up sitting on the board of trustees for 6 years. And that kind of propelled me into having a close relationship with Greg Jones, the president of Belmont, and Drew Ramsey, who's the chair of the songwriting department, is a dear friend and mentor of mine. And so I have stayed in touch with him, and I've kind of done mentorships throughout my time of postgrad. But Chris Dubois ended up saying that he needed to step away from teaching lyric writing. And so I have very big shoes to fill. But Drew called me up and said, hey, we have a night class on Monday nights. Would you like to teach it? And I'm just laughing because I'm like, I don't feel qualified to teach, but I'm 28. But I do feel just very excited. We had our first class this past Monday night. And Professor Falvey is in the building, I guess.
That was amazing.
So I just still laugh. I literally sat with the students and they were like, we just feel like you're one of us. And I'm like, I am. I don't know anything more than y'all know. I'm just happy to be here.
Yeah.
So anyway.
I think it's awesome. And you have, again, you just had so much success already, and can't wait to just keep sitting back and watching what's to come.
Thank you.
So
I appreciate it.
We will put links to your podcast and some of your music and socials and all of that in the liner notes. Everybody out there listening, make sure you check that out. And just, thanks again for spending some time with us.
Thank you. You're a gift.
Thanks to SMAC for having us as a part
SMAC.
of this. So always end on this question. So you moved around a lot. So I don't know where you would have been at 8 years old, but if you could go back to 8-year-old Emily.
Yeah.
Everything that you've accomplished in 28 years.
Yeah.
What advice would you give yourself today?
Yeah. Oh gosh. I think trust yourself more. I've always struggled with insecurity. That's like just cross that I bear in life is when I was at Belmont, I felt unqualified. When I was in high school, I felt unqualified and kind of always dimmed myself down to make other people feel more comfortable maybe. And I think I've always had a pretty good gut instinct of where I need to go next. And sometimes I wouldn't follow that for fear or for thinking that I wasn't good enough. And I think that just knowing that inner voice, I've heard it said, gut feelings are guardian angels. And I think just to trust myself more would be my advice. So, yeah.
So good. Emily, thank you so much.
Thank you, Chris.
And thank you, everybody out there listening. This has been another episode of Stories Behind the Songs with Emily Falvey, and we will see you next time. Thank you for listening to another episode of Stories Behind the Songs with Chris Blair. Make sure to give us a follow on Spotify if you enjoyed this episode, and make sure you click that notification button so you can keep notified when new episodes come out. We release brand new episodes every Tuesday, and you can find us on YouTube at Stories Behind the Songs with Chris Blair or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Don't forget to send us a comment letting us know what you thought of the episodes. We love getting your feedback, and share this with your friends. The more we grow, the more that we can keep doing this. It's our mission to bring you all of these great stories behind the songs from some of Nashville's most iconic artists and songwriters, publishers, producers, everyone in between, and a lot of my great friends. We love what we do, and we love sharing their stories with you. We appreciate all of the continued support. Thanks also to all of our sponsors, and we will see you all next week.